the Qing Dynasty. Now that we've explored the Ottoman Turks and the Mughal Empire, we'll proceed to one of our grandest East Asian empires, the Qing Dynasty. So, before we dive deeper into the Qing, I want you to look at this one question for a do now. If Donald Trump built a border wall, would it actually work? Would the huge wall even work? That's the question you're going to be figuring out. If he did build this border wall, would it work? Or wouldn't it? So take a few moments to think about that question. Then, when we're done talking, I'll explain precisely why I asked this question. Alright, let's proceed. So the Manchu invasion. So, the reason I asked this question is because the Great Wall of China is probably the world's most impressive border wall. It is also one of the most colossal failures in the history of border walls. And the Qing Dynasty is an entire multi-century testament to that failure. So, the Qing Dynasty actually began as a ruling family over in Manchuria, which is a country to the northeast of China. Now, they entered China by navigating around the Great Wall of China. So, the Great Wall of China stretches across China's northern border, and it's supposed to run from the Gobi Desert on its western side to the sea over on the east. Now, there's a mountain range near the sea. So the Great Wall was supposed to go up to that mountain range, but there's a small pass that's left between the mountain range to the east and the Great Wall to the west. The Manchu army exploited that pass, and they pushed their entire army through the pass, and by so doing avoided the largest border wall in history and entered China. By 1644, the Qing had conquered most of China, and by 1683, the last Ming Dynasty remnant, which was located in the island of Taiwan, finally fell to Qing control. So by the end of the 17th century, the Qing Dynasty, Manchurians, had surpassed the greatest border wall in history and had come to rule over one of the largest nations in the world at that time. So that's why I brought up this question about the border wall, because if one of the greatest border walls in history was a colossal failure, for all the hoopla about whether we should or shouldn't be building the wall, is it even gonna work? Would it even... History so far would seem to point towards a no as the answer to that question, that it's not going to stop anyone. Human beings will figure a way around a wall. So, whether it's ethical or not ethical to build the wall is an entirely different debate, but it's probably not going to be efficacious even if it's built. So let's proceed onward. Let's see what else the Qing can talk about to us. So, the Qing were massive conquerors. Not only did they conquer China from the Ming, but they also conquered the land to the west of China and founded what's called the Zhejiang province. Now, the Zhejiang province is very interesting because it's out in the Asian steppe, out past the Gobi Desert. And it's kind of similar, it's more similar to where the Turks originated. The Tartars and the Turks and others like that. And the people who live out there are more similar to the Uzbekistani and the folks of Kazakhstan and Chechnya and places like that. And that's rather interesting. They're very different ethnically speaking and even religiously from the Chinese in China proper. Now, Tibet, which had managed to gain a brief period of independence, was once again secured under Chinese rule. Now, Manchuria, where the Qing were originally from, were also under Qing control. making the Qing Dynasty version of the Chinese Empire the largest Chinese empire in history. Larger than the Han, the Yan, the Ming, the Qin, you name it, these guys were the largest. So, the Sinification, or Chineseifying, if you will, of the Qing. So now, remember, the Qing are ethnically Manchu. They're not Han Chinese, like most of the people of China. And they come to China as outsiders, foreigners, foreign invaders. However, the Qing are very quick to embrace Chinese culture rather than trying to hoist Manchu culture onto China. They begin to practice Confucianism, right? And Confucianism was rather important to China, and we'll get in a little more to reviewing Confucianism with China. But they began to embrace Confucianism. They even reformed the Confucian civil service exam. They adopted the old Ming capital of Beijing as their, and the Forbidden City in the palace in Beijing as their formal royal residence, rather than their traditional home in Manchuria. They wore traditional Chinese clothing and had traditional Chinese portraiture. Now, what's interesting about Chinese portraiture is that Chinese paintings were always very interesting because the Chinese calligraphists, those who did writing, wrote with a brush. And so many of the best writers in China were also exquisite painters. And as you can see from the portrait on the right-hand side of the slide of a Qing Dynasty emperor, you can see he wears traditional Chinese garb. He's wearing the yellow robes of an emperor, yellow imperial robes with the five-toed dragon of the Chinese emperor. And the painting is done in a traditional Chinese style. It looks very similar to Ming Dynasty paintings. So in other words, the Qing, even though they're Manchu, they become more Chinese. They adopt Chinese culture in order to better rule over China. And that's important to note, that they're trying to accommodate the majority of their citizens by embracing a Chinese way of life, even though the Han Chinese are essentially the conquered people. The Qing are Manchu. So one would almost expect that they would have tried to Manchurianize China, but instead it's the opposite. They become more Sinified. They become more Chinese. So, Qing foreign policy. So, one major aspect of the Qing is a belief in cultural superiority. They even referred to the British as barbarians in official correspondence between the British monarch and the Qing emperors. We have letters between the Qing and the Hanover dynasty, which in Britain, which is the dynasty of George III. And we have references where they refer to the British as barbarians. And they refer to them allowing the British to trade anything as their benevolence to try to civilize the British. And one major reason for this belief is because of the enduring nature of Chinese Confucianism. So, the Qing were not the first foreign dynasty, if memory will serve. The Yan dynasty were Mongols. And since the time of the Han Dynasty, Confucianism, with its belief in the 5 Confucian bonds, had all, and filial piety, with respect to the parents, the Confucian bonds, the relationship of ruler and subject, husband and wife, parent and child, older brother, younger brother, friend to friend. These kind of ideas that were important to Confucianism, these types of relationships of respect for authority, and ideas of this nature, this sense of shame, and this sense of you obey more out of a sense of shame, a sense of leading by example. These were things that even the conquering people embraced, right? The Yan dynasty at Kublai Khan, they became more Chinese. The Qing became more Chinese. So even when China as a political military entity was conquered, quote unquote, Chinese culture then sort of conquered the conqueror and made them Chinese. So the Chinese way of life, if you will, in many ways, its ethics, its culture, remained to some extent less changed since the time of the Han. There was this sense of continuation. And this idea that even when foreigners come here, they embrace our ways. We don't take things from them, they take things from us, culturally speaking. And on top of that, China had not really felt the need to modernize. They didn't have a modern navy, they weren't trying to invest in gunpowder weapons. They controlled most of the luxury goods, the spices, the silks, the porcelain. So they didn't really see foreign nations making anything that they wanted. And so they saw no reason to have foreign trade as well. And these two factors together are going to be very important for understanding the Qing mindset. The Qing really do think that they represent they call it the one nation under heaven, the central nation, as China calls it, the central kingdom. This idea that they are the most important political entity in the world. And that's going to be very important to understanding their mindset going forward. Now, religion in the Qing Empire. Now, the Qing themselves followed the traditional Manchu religion. They even occasionally go back to Manchuria to venerate their ancestors and worship traditional Manchu gods. However, Confucianism was, as I mentioned previously, the unifying philosophy of China. So the Qing also adopted Confucian ways and Confucian rituals of ancestor veneration and things like that. Now, there were other religions in China. So there was Zen Buddhism and Mahayana Buddhism, Nestorian Christianity. Nestorian Christianity was a sect of Christianity that it was not a traditional Trinitarian sect of Christianity. We don't have to go into the details. That's more Global 9 type of stuff. But they were a small minority branch of Christianity, and they had found their way to China under the Qing Dynasty. And then you had Islam, and there were quite a few Muslims. Some of them were Muslim traders who had traveled along the Silk Road and had found their way in China over the centuries. And others were residents of Zhejiang province, right? Just like the Turks who were converted to Islam and the Chechens who were converted to Islam. The people out in Zhejiang province, sometimes called Chinese Turkestan, were also Muslims. And this is also going to become rather interesting in later events of 20th century history, the fact that China has this large Muslim, ethnically Turkish or ethnically Turkic population out west in Zhejiang province. Now, the Jesuits in the Qing court. This is a fun story. So in the 1700s, Jesuit priests, right, they're members of the Society of Jesus, founded by St. Ignatius Loyola, they arrive in Beijing on a missionizing effort. And they arrive in the Forbidden City, and they are granted a stay at the court. Now, their status at royal court means that because they're let in on so many of the secrets of the Qing Dynasty, they are not allowed to leave. They cannot return home. So they're lifelong guests/prisoners in the court of the Qing. And one of the main things the Jesuits originally arrived to do was to try to open up China to missionizing efforts. If you remember from our review of the Reformation, the Jesuits were vital in a large amount of the missionizing efforts to reconvert Protestant Europe and to convert natives in the Americas, and they also wanted to bring Catholicism to China. Now, the Jesuits, while they are at the court of the Qing, they give us a lot of interesting insights into Qing culture. The painting, for example, you see on the right-hand corner is one of the few paintings of a Qing emperor in Manchu military garb. And that's rather interesting. It's also painted in a more traditionally European style. And it was done by a Jesuit missionary at court. And he did this, and this is one of the few sources we get of the more Manchu side of the Qing. And the emperor himself was actually quite open to the possibility of Catholicism being a religion in China, so long as it would not prevent the Chinese from observing traditional Confucian rituals. So the Jesuits write back to the Pope, expressing kind of their excitement. Yes, we have a breakthrough, and the largest empires on earth has just agreed to let us missionize. And the Pope looks at Confucianism and says there's certain rituals that will not are not compatible with Catholicism. And that was the end of the missionizing effort. And that concludes